What up, what up, what up, what up, what up? I wanted to talk to you guys about something that I'm super passionate about, and that is mixed martial arts. I've noticed that when I'm talking to you guys about something that I'm super passionate about, it seems to kind of pique your interest a lot more. And so today I've decided to do so. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pop up my live screen, and I want to talk about a few different things. First, I want to talk about um, potential super fights and things that obviously people are looking forward to, big headlines, like the type of stuff that everybody's talking about. And then I want to talk about like my potential, my goats and my greatest of all time, or the people that I would see on the MMA Mount Rushmore, or even just fights from local fights that I want to see, or even just fights that I want to see on like a national or a regional level. So let's talk about the biggest one that everybody's supposedly talking about, that Chael Sonnen seems to doesn't think that people are actually talking about, or they actually even give a shit about. And that's going to be Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. So here, I'm going to pop this up on the screen. So let's talk about Tom Aspinall first, right? So Tom Aspinall. All right, and I'm going to give my reason why I don't feel like this fight is as big as what people are making it out to be. And if I'm wrong, you guys can tell me. I'd definitely love for you guys to interact and let me know what you think. All right, as it's a big deal. Okay, so before we go down to his record, right? Aspinall's a hell of a fighter. I like watching him fight. I think he's big, he's explosive, and not only is he big, he's explosive. He's got hands. He's got great grappling. He can kick. I mean, the guy's got every single thing that he needs to become a world champion. And not only just a world champion, but a world champion who could dominate the division for a long time. And he's 32 years old, so he's got probably about 4 or 5 years of being in his absolute prime. And then some guys are freaking freaks of nature, like the Yoel Romeros of the world, and they go on way beyond that. But right now, all right, I can understand the urgency that they have to try to get this fight done. I mean, he's 32, so he's not super, super young, but he's in his prime right now. So that's going to be important for him to try to get this fight right now. Also, he came off of a knee injury that was caused during the Curtis Blades fight, which he lost the fight. Then he came back and avenged the fight. So that was a big win for him. But you have that knee injury kind of looming in the back, which means that his body's starting to show the wear and tear of doing all of this type of training and stuff like that. Okay. The other thing is, he's the young, hungry lion, smoking and pretty much walking through the division, right? And so everybody's saying that he deserves this fight. Like, he should be the guy to get the fight against Jon Jones. Here's why I understand Jon Jones' argument, okay? Let's go down to Tom Aspinall's record, all right? So when you look at his record, right, as a professional, all right, he's got 1, 2, 3, boom. On his 4th fight, he drops one to a heel hook. Okay, doesn't matter because he's not in the UFC yet. All right, then he wins, then he loses another one because he hit an illegal downward elbow, similar to what Jon Jones did. So that's fine. Then he goes on a 1, 2, 3, 4, a 3-fight win streak before he gets to the UFC. Cool, perfect. All right, now that he's in the UFC, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 victories in a row before he ends up with the Curtis Blade injury. All right. Now let's talk about the names that he beat, because that's going to be also very important. He beat Jake Collier, never fought for a title. Alan Baudot, never fought for a title. Andrei Arlovski was a champion from a long time ago. And unfortunately, Arlovski doesn't have the same type of, no disrespect to the man. I'm a huge fan, by the way, of all of these guys. But Andrei Arlovski hasn't been in title contention for a long time. Then he beat Sergey Spivak, which is a good fighter, and Alexander Volkov. Both also great fighters, great heavyweights. All right. Now here's where it kind of does count. He had performance of the night, performance of the night, performance of the night, performance of the night in 4 of his 5 wins in the UFC, which means he's a freaking exciting person. Okay. Then he loses to Curtis Blades. Then he comes back and he beats Marcin Tybura, and he beats Sergey Pavlovich, who was going to be like the big deal. Now this is a weird run, right? Because this is for an interim title, right? Now, this is all because of the Jon Jones situation. And then he beats Curtis Blade and defends the interim championship, which I don't believe should be a thing, honestly. Like, if the guy fought for a title and the champion's not back, he should be fighting for the undisputed title. So that argument I do understand. But then again, we're talking about Jon Jones, which makes things very, very different, okay? Because let's just go to Jon Jones. And this is why I understand John Jones' argument. And I think it's a fantastic argument. Okay. Let's put all of the negative stuff aside from from John Jones, right? And let's just look at the record. Where are we? Oh, where's the record? Mixed martial arts record. Okay. I'm going to tell you something cool. I happened to be at this fight right here, at the Parker Porter fight. I was working the cage, setting up a cage and doing security on the night that John Jones won his 5th fight. It was crazy, bro. Okay, first off, what an experience. All right, this dude just walks out from underneath the from the back with a black towel over his head. It was great, and you just saw this enormous being walking to the cage, and then he did work, which was great. So I have been watching John Jones since then, since 2008. But I want to show you a really awesome stat. Okay, Jones started fighting as a professional in 2008. And before the year was out, okay, he was fighting in the UFC. Now let's think about that. He fought April 12th, April 19th, and April 25th. Okay, he fought 3 fights in 1 month as a professional. Okay, that's no easy task. This is why this guy is so good. All right, he fought 3 fights as a professional in 1 month. That's freaking nuts, bro. He won a fight by TKO in 132, won a fight in 24 seconds, and then he won one in 15, right? Then you go to the very next month, he wins the next fight in 14 seconds. The very next one, he wins in 36 seconds. And then now he's fighting for a title, right? And then he wins the title in 1 minute and 58 seconds of round number 2, right? Oh, no, sorry. I'm counting this incorrectly. Sorry. Okay. So that's even more impressive, right? Because he got to the first round finish here, 132, then 3rd round finish in 24 seconds, then 1st round finish. So like he's moving. All right. Now, then he gets to the UFC, and let's talk about this. All right. This is in 2008. It's currently 2025. If you truly think about how impressive that is, okay, 2008, all right, to 2025, all right, he has beat, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 is questionable, but we know what actually happened. No disrespect, Matt Hamill, great story, by the way, if you haven't watched it. He destroyed Matt Hamill. So now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 fights. 24 fights in a row. Now let's talk about this, because obviously you saw the no contest with DC and you see the illegal ground strike with Matt Hamill. Okay, but he's won 24 fights. He became a champion. Okay, and this is crazy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In his 8th fight in the UFC, he became a champion 3 years after he started as a professional. That is freaking insane. Okay, let's just talk about this. It's freaking insane. All right. But now this is why I understand John Jones' argument when he's saying Tom hasn't really fought anybody. And that's not really Tom Aspinall's fault. It's also Tom is fighting in a different era of the UFC. The names that John Jones beat were guys who were coming off of being legends in Pride, and they were legends in the UFC. Now, has the competition level changed? Yes, I believe that it has. It's elevated. I believe that it's elevated over the years, and the athletes that are fighting now are much better than the athletes from before. But you can't discredit at all the athletes from before, because they're guys who did friggin' impressive things in their own right. And here's my argument, right? Okay, let's go to fight number 2 in the UFC. Ultimate Fighter alumni Stephan Bonnar. All right, Jones destroyed him. Okay, he absolutely destroyed him in his 2nd fight. Okay, and Stephan Bonnar has like one of the greatest fights in UFC history. Now, did he ever fight for a title? No, but still very impressive in his own right. Then he beats Jake O'Brien. Then he beats Matt Hamill, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was a title contender. Then he beats Brandon Vera, who was a UFC champion. I'm not mistaken. Let's check that stat out real quick. Okay, let's go to the fight record, martial arts record. No, he was not. I am incorrect about that. But where I am correct is that he became the 1FC champion. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's go back. All right. So he beats, and again, this is what makes it so impressive. I was incorrect about that stat. But he beats nothing but champions, either former, they were current, or they're going to be champions in the future. Brandon Vera became a 1FC champion. Vladimir Matyushenko was a UFC champion. Ryan Bader became Bellator champion, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on one second. I'm having some issues here with my little scroll wheel. What is going on here? Give me one sec. Let me refresh my stuff here. Okay, something's going on with my internet. Let's figure it out. Whoever's watching, thank you for watching, by the way. All right, let's go back to that mixed martial arts record. Okay. So again, we're right here, right? Brandon Vera, Vladimir Matyushenko, Ryan Bader becomes a champion. Mauricio Shogun Rua, okay, who he beat to become the youngest UFC champion, if I'm not mistaken on that stat, was a champion in Pride. All right. Then he beats Quinton Jackson, who was champion in the UFC. Then he beats Lyoto Machida, who was champion in the UFC. He beats Rashad Evans, who was champion in the UFC. He beats Vitor Belfort, who was champion in the UFC. He beat Chael Sonnen. And Chael Sonnen is an interesting guy because Chael Sonnen beat Paulo Filho in the WEC. And in my opinion, he should have been the champion. The only issue was that Paulo Filho didn't make weight. And then Chael goes on and has that stellar performance against Anderson Silva. And Chael in his own right deserves his own conversation and video. I'll explain why in a few minutes. Chael's a very, very special guy who fought pretty much the who's who. Like a guy who literally fought everybody that was a legend in his time except for Georges St. Pierre. That fight never happened. But for a fight fan, that dude fought them all, man. And I'll go into that later. All right. Alexander Gustafsson, who wasn't able to become a champion, but gave John the fight of his life. And John then came back later and whooped his ass and avenged it, which is crazy to think about. Okay. Glover Teixeira, who became a champion in the UFC. Daniel Cormier, who's a 2-division champion in the UFC. Ovince St. Preux, who was just like a contender. Then he beats Daniel Cormier again, but they overturn it because he tested positive for turnable metabolite. And I believe that this is like the picogram thing and all of that shit. And I understand why they overturned it. You can't have any kind of performance enhancing drugs in your system. But let's be honest, everybody saw the fight, okay? Then he smokes Gustafsson for the second fight, all right? Then he beats Anthony Smith, a guy who has a ton of fights, good fighter, good quality, durable fighter. Then he beats Thiago Santos, who was a great fighter. So now he already smoked all the older generation, right? And now he's starting to smoke the new generation. He beat Thiago Santos. He has a questionable fight against Dominic Reyes, which most people believe that Reyes won. It's a tough fight. You watch it back and forth. You can kind of argue for both sides, but he still got the W. Then he beats Ciryl Gane. He moves up to heavyweight after that fight. He's literally done everything that you can do at light heavyweight. Okay, and I believe that he would have beat all of the guys that came after. Okay, I personally feel like he would have beat all the guys that came after. Then he fights Ciryl Gane, and then he beats Stipe Miocic, who's considered to be the greatest heavyweight in UFC history because of how many records that he beats. Okay, and then it says he broke the overall title defense in UFC history, 12. Okay, and then it was performance of the night. But if you truly think about it, it's way more than 12, man. Okay? Because he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, okay? He should have 14 defenses. But the nonsense with the picograms and all of the other stuff, him being stripped, okay? Those things are kind of important, but at the same time, should be 14 title defenses, and the guy is 28-0. Okay, literally 28-0. Okay, he would have been 30-0. Okay, so that would have surpassed Khabib's record had he didn't have the Daniel Cormier situation and the Matt Hamill situation. He would literally be 30-0. Okay, so now when it comes down to the situation with Tom Aspinall, where he's saying, I don't want to do business with Tom, I don't want to fight Tom or anything like that. Let's just say that's what he said, which I don't think is everything that he said. All right, he has a friggin' argument on why he can say that. Aspinall has not been able to achieve these types of numbers. And if this guy is absolutely, all right, just trying to solidify his legacy now on moving forward by doing the biggest events possible, okay, I don't believe myself that this event is going to be as big as what they're thinking, okay? It's not, all right? And that's the shit part. Conor McGregor comes back tomorrow. He's going to sell more pay-per-views than John Jones coming back to fight Tom Aspinall. And that's just kind of a fact right now. And that's because McGregor's an anomaly, all right? But Jones deserves all of the recognitions that he gets. Now, if the guy says, I don't want to do this fight, I would rather fight a guy like Pereira. Okay? Now, let's go to Pereira real quick. And let's talk about why I feel that Pereira would have been a good fight for John Jones. Had Pereira not dropped the fight to Ankalaev, okay, that fight makes way more sense in my opinion than the Tom Aspinall fight. Just for John Jones' argument's sake. I'm not saying that it's 100% true and that it's going to be something that everybody's going to agree with, but in my opinion, I can understand why John Jones is making that argument, okay? Jones is a 2-division champion. That's one thing that we're going to hold into it, okay? Alex Pereira is a 2-division champion, okay, in 2 different organizations, one being a kickboxing organization. The other thing is, if I'm not mistaken, they're about the same age, okay, which is very impressive. Let's go to mixed martial arts record. We're not even going to go to the kickboxing record, okay? Let's talk about this. Pereira gets into the UFC only having 4 professional MMA fights. Now, he's got a plethora of kickboxing fights. So it's not like the guy is shy under the lights, but he's fighting in the UFC at the biggest stage as a kickboxer. So you got to think about that, okay? By the time he fights his 3rd fight in the UFC, he beats Sean Strickland, who becomes a champion after this loss. He beats Adesanya, who's considered to be one of the greatest middleweight champions of all time, okay? He loses to Adesanya, and then he goes up, okay? He goes up to fight against Jan Blachowicz, who was the UFC champion. He then beats Yuri Prochazka, who was the UFC champion at 205. Then he beats Jamal Hill, who is the first, I believe, out of the UFC, out of the Dana White's Contender Series to become a champion, which is impressive, okay? He beats him, who's a champion. Then he beats Yuri Prochazka, again, who was a champion. And then he beat Khalil Roundtree in a friggin' dogfight. Khalil Roundtree was amazing, okay? And then he fights Magomed Ankalaev, who beats him and gets the title. But let's talk about this. I don't think there's anybody else who has beaten that many champions or soon to be champions, okay, except for John Jones, okay? And that makes more sense. Now, I understand the argument for Aspinall. Aspinall makes so much more sense because Aspinall is a heavyweight and Jones is the heavyweight world champion, which means he should fight the next contender in line who is a heavyweight. And although I think that that's important, okay, I don't think we should overlook at all the fact that what John Jones is saying, for my legacy, I would rather fight a guy like Alex Pereira, which makes so much more sense. Again, 2-division champion. John's a 2-division champion. Pereira beat the most champions coming up until he lost to Magomed Ankalaev. And Jones beat the most amount of champions going up until he was stripped of his title for whatever bullshit reason. Okay? So, and even though I guess I shouldn't say bullshit reason because it's actually legitimate, this is important, man. to understand. So, although I would love to see it, and by the way, they're getting my pay-per-view money anyways, okay? Because if John Jones is fighting, I'm watching. If Aspinall's fighting, I'm watching. If Pereira's fighting, I'm watching. I feel like Magomed Ankalaev really jacked up that whole situation. And I feel like that's probably why the UFC hasn't done this fight yet, okay? Because they really needed to wait, okay, as a bargaining chip to see what happened with Magomed Ankalaev and Pereira. Because had Pereira beat Magomed Ankalaev, I feel like we're having a completely different conversation right now. Jones would have probably vacated the title, okay, potentially. Jones would have vacated the title and gone and fought Alex Pereira, whether that be at 205 or heavyweight, which I believe it probably would have been at 205, okay, which would have made more sense. I believe that Aspinall would have just gone on to become the undisputed champion, which in his own right, I feel like Aspinall's legacy being tied to John Jones doesn't make any sense at all, in my opinion. Aspinall's going to go on and do some really great things. He doesn't need John Jones to become the best champion. Now, the only reason he needs John Jones is if he wants to say, I'm the greatest fighter of all time. But the trouble is, even with that argument, okay, even with that argument, let's talk about this, all right? There is so many times where people want to say, I am the greatest fighter of all time, all right? The trouble is, how can you argue that? Okay, let's just go to former champions in boxing and other things, okay, like that. You cannot say that this guy is the greatest fighter of all time, because sometimes when you catch these champs, they're on the way out. After you beat them, they go on a 5-fight losing streak or some shit like that. And so because of that, all right, people will always say he didn't beat the best version of this guy. So it doesn't make sense, right? It sucks. It sucks because there's only a few guys who truly get to hold that they are the greatest fighters of all time, all right? It's like the Khabib situation. Khabib, in my opinion, is one of the greatest 155ers to ever do it. The trouble is he didn't have enough time to continue to defend the titles due to the unfortunate situation with what happened with his father. Totally respect it, understand it, and give nothing but respect to the man, okay? But he didn't have the time to defend his title. Now, on the other hand, Islam Makhachev, okay, who is his father's other protege, all right, is having the opportunity to demonstrate why he is going to be one of the greatest, if not the best 155er, okay, even though he has one loss on his record. So Khabib being perfect, okay, let's just say an undefeated in his career, will not get the same level of validation and respect as Islam Makhachev because he has had more title defenses. And if Makhachev goes up and fights for the 170 title and wins, and then's able to get a few more title defenses, then that changes everything. That literally changes everything in that argument. Okay. Meanwhile, for me, my greatest 155 is a guy that nobody's going to think is the greatest. Okay, but I think he's amazing. Is Eddie Alvarez, and the reason I feel that is because when you come down to it, Eddie Alvarez has won a major title in almost every single organization that he has fought in, and I say almost, because I feel like some of the times that he got in those organizations, he got in those fights, he wasn't truly in his prime and he was kind of done. But that's just my opinion, and that's up for debate on that one. But I just like that. You go into every organization, every single territory, and you become the champ in those territories. I think that's an amazing feat in itself. Okay. So to finish this off with the Tom Aspinall thing, if Tom is just trying to say, I am the greatest heavyweight of all time, it's going to be tough because he never got to face Stipe Miocic. He never got to face Francis Ngannou. And again, it's not his fault. All right. He didn't get to face those guys. All right. And the chances of Ngannou coming back is slim to none. Okay. So if he wants to solidify that, I understand why he wants to get Jones. But the trouble is, if Jones sticks around after, all right, let's say Aspinall beats him, which he has the potential to do. Anybody does. Okay. Let's say he beats John Jones, right? Then what? You beat John Jones. You beat a guy who hasn't fought in a few years. You beat a guy, or he did fight, but you beat a guy who was at the end of his career, right? And so it kind of doesn't make sense. This is why I understand what George St. Pierre just said on the Ariel Helwani's show, where he said, like, don't pass the torch, leave on your own terms. It makes sense. Jones seems to be the piece that's holding up all of these negotiations, but it's truly understandable. Like, what does he get out of it? That's important. What does he get out of this that's going to change anything that he's been able to accomplish? If he beats Aspinall, there'll just be another contender and another contender and another contender and another contender. That's the way the sport works. So I understand that. So let's move on and let's talk about another fight that everybody is talking about, okay? Potentially, which is the former 145 champ, Ilia Topuria, moving up to fight against the current 155 champion in Islam Makhachev. Okay, let's look at this. Okay. Let's start with the champ. Okay, Islam Makhachev is a very impressive fighter. Okay, the guy is super dominant in every single thing that he does. Okay, he can pretty much fight everywhere, and he's just impressive. He's got one loss, which was a flash knockdown. It wasn't like a super flush knockout, but when you see it, you can understand why they stopped the fight. But maybe the guy would have been able to recover. Who knows? But if he doesn't lose that fight, right now he's currently tied with Khabib, and he's got one to two more defenses. Let's check it out. Let's see real quick. Okay. So yeah, he's got to defend his belt one more time. Okay. One more time. Nope, he actually did. He just beat Khabib's record. Okay, so he's defended his UFC lightweight championship 4 times. Okay, in less amount of time than Khabib, but he has one loss. Okay, so that changes stuff. But if he goes ahead and beats Topuria, okay, and I also understand his argument on why he doesn't want to fight Topuria. It totally makes sense. But let's look at his record. Okay, he gets to the UFC. He beats Leo Kuntz. He loses his second fight by KO punch to Adriano Martinez. Martinez doesn't fight anymore. Let's look at that. Martinez last fight, actually he does. It was in 2025. And this is crummy, right? Look at Martinez's record right now, which is why they're probably not talking about it. His last win was in the UFC was Islam Makhachev. And then he went on to the split decision. He got KO'd. He lost a decision. Then he goes back to Brazil. He has a no contest there. Then he loses a decision. Then he loses a decision. Then he wins one fight. And then he loses another decision. Okay. This is a guy who holds a win over the current UFC 155 champion. Okay. Oh, let's go back here. All right. So we're going to look at Makhachev's record, right? And Makhachev, since he's been in the UFC, okay, he beat Chris Wave, Nick Lentz, tough contender. Gleison Tibau, tough contender, but he was kind of at the end of his career, in my opinion, in the UFC. Let's just look at that. Okay. Last time he fought was in 2024, but the last time he fought in the UFC was in 2018. Okay. And so that stat in itself is also very important. Okay. And by the way, that's a good victory for Islam Makhachev, as a lot of people feel that Gleison Tibau beat Khabib when he fought Khabib. Okay. And so if you watch that fight, that seemed to be one of the tougher fights for Khabib Nurmagomedov in the UFC. Okay, so we're still on Gleison. Let's go back to Islam. Okay, so he beats Gleison Tibau, then he fights Kajan Johnson. Okay, then he beats Arman Tsarukyan. Tsarukyan was a great fight. That's why they got fight of the night, and that was in Russia. Then he beats Davi Ramos, Davi Ramos is an impressive jiu-jitsu guy. Okay, he beats Drew Dober, who's as tough as nails. That's a great fight. These are young contenders, man. He beats Thiago Moises, who's a good, tough fighter. He beats Dan Hooker, tough fighter. He beats Bobby Green, who'll fight anybody. Then he beats Charles Oliveira when Oliveira's at the top of his game. That's an impressive victory. He beats Alexander Volkanovski, but in this fight, okay, Volkanovski gives him the hands in the 3rd round, and it seems like this is the most amount of struggle that Makhachev has had, okay? But then he comes back and he KOs Alexander Volkanovski. Then he submits Dustin Poirier. Okay. And then he beats Moicano. All right. Now, the interesting thing about this is finish, finish, finish. Okay. Finish, 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 finish. Okay. Finish. So Makhachev's a bad dude. Okay. He's beating most people by finishing them, and he's finishing high level guys. Great. Very good. All right. I personally feel like Makhachev should do whatever he wants. If he wants to go up to 170 and fight, I think that's the best place for him. But let's talk about Topuria. Okay. And there's a very important fact here that I want to go over when it comes to the mystique of the the Dagestani or that whole side of the world, the Russians, the Georgians, and all of that stuff. Okay, there's a mystique for American fighters fighting against these guys that their wrestling is the most amazing thing, and it's really great. The way they wrestle is fantastic, right? But what do you say to a guy who's from the same area, a Georgian, right, who doesn't care about, you're just another guy to him, all right? And this dude's got hands, all right? So that makes things very interesting. Now, let's talk about his record, okay? So he's 9-0 before he gets to the UFC, or he's 8-0, and then he gets to the UFC and he wins his first fight by decision, all right? Then he wins his second fight by KO. Then he wins his third fight by KO. Then he wins his fourth fight by KO. Then he wins his fifth fight by submission. Then he wins his sixth fight by decision against a big power puncher, okay, a guy who was in contention. Then he beats Volkanovski by KO, and then he beats Max Holloway by KO. Now, the interesting part about this is Alexander Volkanovski is considered to be one of the greatest featherweights of all time, and Max Holloway is also considered to be one of the greatest featherweights of all time. Now, why that stat is impressive, but also still not, people aren't going to understand how impressive that is because the featherweight division in the UFC is still very young. Okay? The featherweight division only comes about in the UFC, right? There's only been 4 champions, if I'm not mistaken, in the featherweight division right now. So the history and the lineage doesn't run as deep as all of the other, divisions moving forward. So I think it's like from 55 to heavyweight, okay? Because these divisions didn't come up until the acquisition of the WEC. When the WEC comes into play, that's when all of the lighter weight divisions come in, and also the women's division when they bought out not Elite XC, what was it? I can't remember right now, but I remember when they bought out this thing. What was it? It's not Bellator. Bellator came out after that. Strike Force. When they buy the Strike Force, that's when they end up with the women's divisions. So if you think about it, okay, he beat 2 of the longest reigning champions. All right, 2 of the longest reigning champions in the featherweight division. The only guy missing from this list is Jose Aldo. Okay, and Jose Aldo potentially could have been a really, really great fight to him, but Aldo is now at 135, which makes sense. Okay, so had Aldo been in the 145 division, I guarantee you that the Georgian would have fought against him. Okay, Ilya would have fought him, and that's impressive when you truly think about that, because then at that point, if that fight could happen, and I'm pretty sure he probably called for that fight, he would have literally beat the only three 145 champions that there ever were, for him to become the best featherweight there is. Now, again, this is where that argument of being the greatest at anything starts to muddy the waters, right? So he beat Alex, and then he beat Max. Great. You beat the 2 longest reigning featherweight champions. Okay. The trouble is you beat Alexander Volkanovski after Makhachev had just KO'd him with a head kick. Okay. And I think Volkanovski needed a little bit more time. And then he beats Max after a freaking dogfight. Okay. Which the Max one's impressive. But Max had just jumped up to 155 to then dehydrate himself back down to 145. Now, that's not Ilya's fault. None of that is Ilya's fault. Okay. But that's just the way the chips play out. Now he's leaving the division only after 1 title defense. Okay. Only after 1 title defense to go up and fight for the 155-pound title. Now the argument here with Ilya, okay, the argument here with Ilya is that he smoked everybody in the division and there's really no other contenders for him. Fair enough. Fair enough. But he wasn't able to beat the young man that Volkanovski just fought, and Diego Lopez. And he never got to fight against, let's see, where is this guy? Okay. All right. And he never fought Mosarf. Okay. Who's at 145 right now. And he also hasn't fought against Sterling, who is now at 145. Okay. So there are a few more contenders there. Like true contenders. Never had to beat Arnold Allen at 145. Okay. So there are some contenders there, but at the same time, I kind of understand what he's saying. Like, well, what's the point? All right. I beat guys that have beaten those guys. All right. And yes and no. Yes and no, in my opinion. But to go up to challenge, okay, Makhachev it's tough because I believe he can beat him. I believe Makhachev can beat Topuria. But I feel like the argument here, and this is why storylines are so friggin' important in mixed martial arts. For fans and for sales. Not so much for fights, okay, but for fans and for sales. Remember that the UFC is a powerhouse and it's a business and it has to sell you a fight. It is selling you a vision, a dream, a mirage, because they don't know if the shit's going to pop off or not. All they know is that 2 guys are going to go in there and they're going to swing. And so while they're trying to sell you that, it's very important. And so this is what's so impressive about this type of stuff is that they have to sell you this mirage. Now, here's the truth. The mirage of Ilia Topuria versus Makhachev is a great one, okay? Because the story they can be sold is Ilia Topuria just cleaned out the 145 division, which is utter bullshit. He hasn't cleaned out the whole division yet, but he's going to clear out the whole division. He's cleared out the whole division, and now he's going up to challenge for the 155 title, okay, against Islam Makhachev, who's a dominant champion. And the reason that sells is because Volkanovski was a dominant champion. Max Holloway was a dominant champion. And Max Holloway had the BMF title. And the way Topuria knocked him out, they can sell that shit. And we're going to eat it up as MMA fans because it's important, right? It's like, oh, wow. This is what he was able to do. This is what he was able to do. But should he jump the line in front of other 155 contenders to fight Islam Makhachev? My personal opinion? For a ranking standpoint, no. For the fans, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Why not? The guy's a champ and he's going up to fight against another champ and he's calling for it. He's calling out the champ. If Makhachev does not fight him, right, it makes Makhachev look bad. But at the same time, if Makhachev goes out there and beats him in a dominant fashion, I understand Makhachev's argument. They're going to say I beat up another little guy. They're going to say I beat up another person who doesn't deserve it. That's a solid argument, like a legitimately solid argument. And he's right. I mean, that's literally what they're going to say. But at the same time, if that's what they're saying, who gives a shit? Give the fans what they want, man. Because in the end of the day, my opinion, this is just my opinion. Makhachev is not as easy as what Topuria is making it out to seem. Now, Topuria feels like he can find Makhachev's chin, and Volkanovski found his chin, so why wouldn't Topuria be able to find it when Topuria has crisper boxing? But we have not seen Topuria on the ground like in serious peril yet. And we have seen Makhachev in serious peril. Okay, we have. When he fought Volkanovski, okay, Volkanovski put him on his back and was laying in big ground and pound shots, and he had to fight through that. We've also seen Makhachev in a tough dogfight when he fought against Dustin Poirier, and he had to really grind it out, and he's getting hit with big shots. The guy proved that he was a real fighter, not just a champion who was able to get in there and win fights. No, he's a champion who is durable and he can scrap. Topuria showed one time in the Jai Herbert fight that he can take a shot and he can keep coming forward. He showed in the Max Holloway fight that he is also a dog and that he can fight until he finds the spot. This fight is super intriguing. But I understand all the arguments across the board. And this is why I don't care if it takes a little bit longer. The one thing I don't want to happen in the UFC is what happens in other sports organizations like boxing and things like that, where sometimes in the past, the champions didn't fight the best available opponents at the time that those opponents were available in order to protect their record, which is great. It's good for the fighter. It really is good for the fighter, but it's bad for the fans. And so as a fan, first off, these are fights that I am very interested in and that I would like to see, but I do understand what these guys are saying. Now, if you ask me why I'm so passionate about this sport, one, I have competed in mixed martial arts as an amateur. I had 4 fights as an amateur. I was 2-2. Not the greatest record, but I also did it when I was 30. I had two knockouts back to back, 17 seconds and 16 seconds, and then I lost my next fight to a great opponent. And I lost that fight in the second round by TKO, and then I lost to another good opponent in the first round by rear naked choke submission with like 4 seconds. Okay, these guys beat me, but it's something that I've been passionate about since I was 6-7 years old, since the first time I ever watched the UFC. Okay, my reason for not fighting or competing until later on in life was just the way I decided to build my life out. But when you think about that, this is something that I've been watching week in and week out for a long time. This is something that I've been studying. I'm a fan. I also coach mixed martial arts now, and I coach jiu-jitsu, and I've been doing that for over, I'd like to say 11 years now. Yeah, close to 11 years, 10, 11 years. And I have competed in jiu-jitsu tournaments. I've competed in sports jiu-jitsu tournaments, judo, and in other style of like karate style point fighting tournaments as well. So I love martial arts. I've been doing boxing since I was 5 years old. I love martial arts. I'm a huge fight fan. And anything where anybody throws hands or is doing punching and kicking, man, I'm in for it too. Nerdy shit as well. So that's why I'm so freaking passionate about this particular stuff. Now, when it comes to the greatest fighters of all time, it's hard to make that argument. And I understand why certain people get left off of certain lists and other ones do not get put on the list. If I have to say who are the greatest mixed martial artists of all time, and I have to consider and take into account every single thing, not just fight skill, okay? Because if it's based off of pure fight skill, okay, I'm going to go off, I'm going to say John Jones, okay, I'm going to say Demetrius Johnson, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Those are the guys that I feel have had the most success just within the UFC and were able to do such amazing things. But then you have guys who looked unstoppable in the Pride era and stuff like that. I just feel like some of those guys stayed a little bit too long. And because they stayed a little bit too long, they're not going to be able to have that, you know, because they started taking losses later on in their career that they shouldn't have taken. But if we're talking about just pure skill, title defenses, never had any kind of issues. Okay, pretty much fought everybody. All right, and then came back and avenged some losses. Went into another organization and won a few fights. Mighty Mouse, Demetrius Johnson, is got to be considered the greatest fighter to do it. I mean, he has to be. If we're just talking about those stats, if you're talking about longest reign and a guy who's never really been beaten, okay, on paper, anyways, it's got to be John Jones. So, in my opinion, those are the top two guys. Anderson was great. I loved watching Anderson's reign. He did an impressive thing, but Mighty Mouse beat his record. George was great, but he left in a time and made a very big, important statement by making sure that fighters were clean afterwards. And it's impressive. The one thing I like about George St. Pierre is George is like the pettiest human being on earth. And I say that in like a really respectful way, right? Like George is the type of guy that you would say, I'm gonna beat him with wrestling. This guy can't beat me. He doesn't do this. And George St. Pierre would go out there and out wrestle you. They would say George is a wrestler now. He ain't nobody. He's not gonna beat me. Like what he's gonna do? Knock me out? George will go out there and knock the dude out. Like the guy is just super petty on whatever you say. He's gonna beat you in that because he believes that he did more work than you and that he's gonna outwork you in that. So that's very important. So I want to share that because I'm excited about this stuff, right? I'm excited about everything that's going on. And when people want to ask me about who's the greatest, who you think is the greatest, all of this stuff, that's my argument, man. But then we could go individually by weight classes. And then there's the anomalies. And the anomalies are like the guys who fought the greatest guys in their era, okay, and had good fights, like the Bispings. Okay, Michael Bisping literally fought everybody, or he fought the two greatest, okay, at the time, the two biggest UFC stars. He fought George St. Pierre and he fought Anderson Silva. Okay, now did he fight him at the time that they were the absolute best? That's something to be argued. Then you've got Chael Sonnen. Like let's talk about Chael Sonnen, man, real quick. Because when people talk about this guy, you know, they talk about the antics and all the stuff about him talking about I'm undefeated and I'm this and I'm that. Man, Chael's been a guy that I've been watching since the WEC, who was he's so freaking awesome. I gotta be honest with you. I love watching the guy fight. I love watching him talk. He talks a lot of bullshit, but it's great. It's great because he's also talking a lot of like serious stuff. But he plays a character. He knows what he's doing and he does it well. Okay, well let's talk about it. His second fight was against Jason Miller. Okay, who fought in the UFC and he beat him. He got to 6-0 before he lost to Trevor Prangley, who was a good fighter. Then he fought Akihiro Gono. These are legendary names. Renato Sobral, Forrest Griffin, Jason Lambert. Then he fights against Jeremy Horn. If you don't know who Jeremy Horn is, dude, Jeremy Horn for a very long time fought pretty much everyone. And he's, look at this, 120 MMA fights. 120 MMA fights. Just absolutely impressive person. Okay. He loses a few fights. He tries to fight him again and win, and he loses. He beats Alex. Then he loses to Terry Martin, all guys who fought in the UFC. Okay. Then he starts winning a few fights. Then he fights Sobral again. And this time, right? This time he loses to Sobral. Okay. Then he beats Trevor Prangley. Then he loses to Jeremy Horn again. He fought him 3 times, man. Like, Chael is such a stubborn freaking person. It doesn't matter if you beat him. He wants to beat you. He's the kind of guy who believes that one adjustment, he can make the change. All right? Then he goes and beats all these guys in Bodog. Then he gets to the WEC, and this is where he loses the first time, and he comes back and beats him, but he missed the weight, right? Then he gets to the UFC and he gets smoked by Damian Maia in one of the smoothest triangle to armbar transitions I've ever seen. Then he beats Dan Miller. Then he beats Yushin Okami. Then he beats Nate Marquardt. Marquardt was champion in Strikeforce. Then he loses to Anderson Silva, but it's fight of the year. And we all know Sonnen's a cheater. That's a known thing, okay? But he gave Anderson a hell of a fight. Then he beats Brian Stan, who was WEC champ. Then he beats Michael Bisping, who later on became the UFC champ. Then he fights Anderson Silva again. Anderson Silva beat him. Okay, and now let's talk about this. Legend, and then he goes up to fight John Jones. Legend. Now, here's the thing. One more round, John Jones wouldn't have been able to continue due to like a toe injury, and Chael becomes the champion. Crazy storyline, but Chael would have become the champion. Then he beats Shogun Rua. I was actually at this event in Boston. He beat him with a submission guillotine. Nobody saw that shit coming. Okay. Impressive. Shogun, again, former champ. He loses to Rashad Evans. Okay. Rashad was a champion. He loses to Tito Ortiz, who was like a legendary champion. Then he beats Vanderlei Silva. Again, legendary Pride champion. Then he beats Quinton Rampage Jackson, who was a champion. Then he fights Fedor Emelianenko, and he loses to Fedor. Okay, but let's think about that. Aside from George St. Pierre, he freaking fought the Mount Rushmore of his time. He fought Fedor, John Jones, Anderson Silva. Had he been able to fight against GSP, okay, Chael literally fought the four greats of his time, of his era. Whether he wins or loses, that's an impressive feat in itself. And then he fights against Lyoto Machida, and Machida beats him. Machida was a UFC champion. Okay? So the crazy part about this is how many opponents him and John Jones have in common. That's what's crazy. But that's why I think this guy is so impressive, and I just wanted to throw his name in the hat while we're there. So with that being said, I'm going to end this stream. Thanks for kind of listening to me, rocking with me right now, and giving me this platform to be able to talk about the things that I love. But I would love to talk about more mixed martial arts with anybody. If you guys have questions, if you want to talk about these things or you have opinions, please do let me know, as I would love to talk to you guys about this. And I hope that this was informative and that you guys got a little bit out of it. I am now going to do some video reviews, play some video games, and do some stuff like that. So, nos vemos. Peace out.